Dana Perino, political powerhouse, television anchor, and one of the most composed voices in American media, has stood at the highest levels of power that Washington, D.C. has to offer. At 53, she is a fixture of Fox News, a best-selling author, and a woman whose poise under pressure has become almost legendary. But the word composed is deceiving. It suggests ease. It suggests things came naturally. They did not. Tragic is what happened behind the scenes during her years in the spotlight. Heartbreaking is the personal loss she endured while maintaining a smile for the cameras. Devastating is what it cost her, privately, to project that relentless calm. And shocking is how little the world knows about the real Dana Perino. She has been called unflappable, graceful, steady. But behind that composure lies a story not glamorous, but brutal. If Dana Perino has ever made you feel that integrity and grace still exist in public life, hit like as a tribute to her quiet, unbreakable resilience. This is the story of a small-town girl from Wyoming who clawed her way into the most pressurized rooms in the world, survived personal devastation, and built a life on her own terms without ever losing herself in the process. Dana Marie Perino was born on May 9, 1972, in Evanston, Wyoming, a small, windswept town near the Utah border, where the population barely cracked 11,000. And ambition was something you kept quietly to yourself. She was raised in a working-class family that valued hard work above everything else. Her father, Leo Perino, worked in the natural resources industry. Her mother, Janice, kept the household together with the steady, practical love that rural American families tend to run on. There was no wealth, no connections, no roadmap to Washington. The beginning was not glamorous, but marked by wide open skies and a very clear ceiling, the kind that small towns build around their daughters without meaning to. Dana was, from the very beginning, a reader, a watcher, a listener. She absorbed news the way other children absorbed cartoons. She was fascinated, genuinely, almost obsessively, by how language shaped the world. How words, chosen carefully, could change what people believed. She attended Ponderosa High School in Parker, Colorado, after her family relocated. She was not the most prominent student. She was not the class president or the homecoming queen. She was the girl in the back of the room who always had an answer and was slightly afraid to raise her hand. That fear would take years to overcome. She enrolled at Colorado State University, Pueblo, majoring in mass communications with a minor in Spanish. It was a small school, not a prestige institution, not the kind of name that opens doors on its own. What few people know is that Dana arrived at college without any expectation that her voice would matter to anyone beyond her classroom. She did not come from a world that told young women to expect a seat at the table. She came from a world that told them to be grateful for a seat at all. She studied abroad in London during her university years, a semester that cracked her world open. She saw what was possible. She saw that women held positions of real authority in British media and government with a matter-of-factness that America had not yet fully embraced. She came home changed, quietly determined. After graduating in 1994, she moved to Washington, D.C. alone, with very little money and no contacts. Not because it was easy, but because it was the only direction that made sense. The beginning of her professional life was marked not by celebration, but by years of invisible labor, answering phones, writing memos, learning how power actually moved through rooms, and watching carefully while others spoke. She was patient, ferociously so. Washington, D.C. does not welcome outsiders warmly. It is a city that runs on legacy, connection, and institutional memory. Dana Perino had none of those things. She started at the bottom, as a staff assistant, and then a press aide in various congressional offices throughout the mid-1990s. She earned salaries that barely covered rent in one of America's most expensive cities. Her early paychecks were, by any measure, humbling, entry-level government staffing roles in D.C. In 1995, paid in the range of $25,000 to $30,000 annually. For someone with no financial safety net, every month was a calculation. Then came 1998. She secured a position as a spokesperson for the United States Department of Justice under the Clinton administration. It was her first real seat at a real table. By 2001, she had transitioned into the Bush administration, eventually becoming an associate communications director at the White House. She was learning, at close range, what it meant to speak on behalf of power, to translate complex policy into language that the public could absorb. The real turning point came in 2005, when she was named Deputy Press Secretary under Scott McClellan. She stood behind that podium with a calm that veteran journalists found almost unnerving. She did not flinch. She did not over-explain. She answered what she could and acknowledged what she couldn't with a directness that was genuinely rare. Then came 2007, shocking to nearly everyone in Washington. Dana Perino was named White House Press Secretary by President George W. Bush, becoming only the second woman in history to hold that position, and the first Republican woman ever to do so. She was 35 years old. Suddenly, everything changed. She stood at the most scrutinized podium in the world daily during some of the most turbulent years of the Bush presidency. The Iraq War, the 2008 financial crisis. She fielded questions that had no good answers and was required to deliver them anyway, with precision, under the full weight of global media attention. The world saw composure, but the truth was different. Every single day was an exercise in controlled pressure that most people will never experience or fully understand. She left the White House in January 2009 when the administration ended. She had served with distinction. She had not cracked, not publicly. By 2009, she joined Fox News as a contributor. By 2012, she had become a co-host of The Five, a roundtable political commentary show that would become one of the highest-rated programs on cable news. She also became a best-selling author. Her memoir, And the Good News Is, published in 2015, debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. A second book, Let Me Tell You About Jasper, followed in 2016, a tribute to her beloved Vizsla dog that revealed, to many readers, an unexpected softness beneath the professional polish. Her estimated net worth by her early 50s stands at approximately $8 million, built entirely on merit. In an industry that does not reward patience easily, behind the podium, behind the television desk, behind the best-selling books and the political credibility, there's a woman who has carried grief that the cameras never fully captured, the marriage that almost didn't survive. Washington Dana met Peter McMahon, a British businessman 18 years her senior, on a flight in 1997. They married in 1998 in Fuengirola, Spain, a small ceremony, far from the corridors of power, intimate and real. What followed was beautiful, but it was also, quietly, extraordinarily hard. Peter was based largely in Europe for significant portions of their early marriage, managing his international business interests. Dana was in Washington, increasingly consumed by one of the most demanding jobs in the American political system. They spent stretches of time, weeks, sometimes months, on different continents. It is heartbreaking when the person you love most is also the person you see least. Not because of indifference, but because of the cost of ambition, a cost that falls unevenly and silently on the people willing to pay it. Dana has spoken in interviews about the loneliness of those years, about coming home to an empty apartment after days of relentless public performance, and having no one to decompress with, about the particular ache of succeeding at something while privately wondering what it was costing her marriage. They made it through, but not without scars that both of them carry. The weight of not having children. This is the tragedy Dana Perino has addressed with more raw honesty than almost any other public figure of her stature. She and Peter wanted children. The combination of their age gap, the demands of her career during its most critical years, and the logistical reality of a marriage stretched across time zones and continents meant that the window, quietly, without a single dramatic moment, closed. There was no single devastating date. No phone call at 3 a.m., no acute crisis to point to. That is what made it devastating in a way that is almost harder to process. It was an absence that accumulated, a door that didn't slam shut. It simply, slowly, stopped being open. She wrote about this publicly and spoke about it on The Five in a way that visibly moved her colleagues. She described the grief not as something she has resolved, but as something she has learned to carry. She said she felt the loss most acutely when she saw young families, not with bitterness, but with a tenderness that had nowhere to land. The world saw a woman who had everything, but the truth was different. She had built a remarkable life, and within that life was a quiet, permanent room of grief that success could not furnish. The toll of the public Gaza 2008. During a White House press briefing, an Iraqi journalist threw his shoes at President George W. Bush, an incident that became one of the most widely replayed moments of the administration. Dana was standing nearby. In the chaos, she was knocked to the ground and suffered a black eye. She returned to the podium the next day. That image, a woman, injured, showing up anyway, is a metaphor for something larger, for the entirety of her public life, for the standard she held herself to, regardless of what it cost her physically or emotionally. Shocking that it is remembered as a footnote rather than a symbol. At 53, Dana Perino has settled into a life that feels, by her own account, earned. She and Peter split their time between New York City and their home in other locations, and their marriage, tested and stretched across decades, has deepened into something that her earlier self could not have fully imagined. She speaks about Peter with a warmth that is unmistakably real. She remains a co-host of The Five on Fox News, which consistently ranks among the top cable news programs in the United States. She is also the anchor of Dana Perino's America and hosts her own podcast, The Perino Podcast, where she interviews newsmakers, authors, and public figures with a curiosity that has always been her most underrated quality. She is currently estimated to earn approximately $4 million per year from her work at Fox News, a figure that reflects both her seniority and her value to the network. After Jasper passed away in 2016, she eventually welcomed a new Vizsla, Percy, into her life, a dog she has spoken about with the same unguarded love that surprised readers of her second book. Percy has his own social media following. This is, somehow, perfectly fitting. She continues to mentor young women entering communications, media, and government, visiting universities, speaking at events, and making time for individual conversations that she was never afforded when she was starting out. At 53, Dana Perino stands as proof that quiet determination is its own form of extraordinary, that you do not have to come from privilege or pedigree to stand in the most important rooms in the world. You simply have to be willing to keep showing up, even when it costs you more than anyone can see. From Evanston, Wyoming to the White House briefing room, from an empty Washington apartment to a life built on honesty, resilience, and the kind of love that survives distance and time and loss. If this story touched your heart, leave a tribute in the comments below. Share a moment when Dana Perino's steadiness, her grace, her refusal to be rattled reminded you that dignity, real, quiet, unshakable dignity, still exists in public life, because it does. And Dana Perino has been proving it every single day for over 30 years.